Hi, everyone, and welcome to Quip. I'm really excited to be interviewing an amazing woman of God and actually a real advocate for women. And this is Mel Manning. Mel, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. I know we've chatted lots because we're friends, but it's nice to actually do it formally.
Yeah, so I've known Mel for years. She's had an amazing journey in her ministry, the things she does for God. But Mel, before we go on to the stuff that you're doing in that, tell us a bit about your journey of faith, how long you've been a Christian, how did you become a Christian? Just a bit about who you are.
Yeah. Okay. You're taking me back now. I've got to go way
Yeah,
back. So,
memory
I,
lane.
yeah, I was brought up in a Christian family. So I always knew going to church. That's what we did. So every Sunday we would go to church. And they were quite charismatic churches. So my mum and dad, evangelical kind of churches. And I think in looking back, I realized that kind of I had my parents' faith. But I didn't realize that at the time. I just thought, oh, well, this is what we do. We go to church. It was only as I got sort of into my teens, like late teens, and went to university, that I didn't really feel like I had a relationship with God.
Mm.
Now, I'm a person where I feel it rather than thinking. So I don't have to kind of know, all the details and know the Bible back to front. I knew in my heart that God was real, but there wasn't really that relationship there. So when I went to university, I quickly went on the wonk. So I didn't go to church. I wanted to join a Christian union, but the night that they met was the night that everybody went out clubbing. Now I realised that they did that for the very reason so people didn't feel they had to go clubbing. But for me, and I think at school I really wanted to fit in. I didn't want to look
Mm.
different. And so for me, I was like, I'm not going to go to Christian Union when everybody else is going out clubbing. I want to be the
Yeah.
same as everyone else. So it was things like that were very subtle, but that kind of took me away from having even more of a relationship, I guess, with God. So I probably was away from church for about 10 years, actually. So it was
Mm.
quite a long stretch. Um, and I would say probably the last couple of years of that time, my life felt very chaotic. I'd been
Mm.
traveling, I'd come back, I'd moved to London, I'd got a job, and I just wasn't happy.
Yeah.
There was just that gap. And it was almost like I had to, as an adult, then work out like what that gap was, because your parents sort of, when you go to church, they sort of take you. And like I said, I didn't feel I had that depth of relationship with God,
Mm.
even though I had a faith. I definitely had a faith. And so it was at that point that I was working at a school, and one of my friends was actually a Christian, and she said, "Oh, why don't you come to my church?" And I did, and that was my journey back into church. It was almost like, oh, okay, this all makes sense now. This is what I've been missing. This is what I need. And my relationship just grew from there, really. So obviously I think I was about 20,
Wow.
23. Yeah,
Wow. And obviously you're only 2 years old.
exactly. I'm still in my 20s. So.
That's amazing, Mel. And I do know you and I know your journey in school and just being a young lady wasn't easy, was it? You had your highs and lows and painful times, and God has kind of like done a lot in you. Just share just some of the stuff that how God has just made you whole, made you like heal your heart.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, at school I was bullied, and I felt like I came through it quite well, as in, it was dealt with. It was obviously it was awful at the time, but once it
Yeah.
was dealt with, I kind of just moved on from it. But what I didn't realize was that actually it was quite significant, and
Mm.
the words that the bully had said over me were words that I was carrying. And it was
Yeah.
only when I had a prayer appointment with a lady from my church, once I'd got back into church, this was like in my 20s, and it came up and she prayed and she said there were like bee stings that needed to be taken out, from that
Wow.
time.
Wow.
And yeah, and that completely lifted, I think, kind of what I was oppressed. I was under those words
Yeah.
that had been spoken over me, but I didn't realize, because the thing is, I do have quite good self-esteem, and obviously we'll talk about this later because this is something I'm passionate about, helping other people
Mm.
feel good about themselves. So it was quite subtle, and I think sometimes when things are subtle, we're not able to pinpoint what it is. And
Yeah.
it was only through
Yeah.
prayer that it actually came up, and I was like, okay, that makes sense. And then recently, obviously, we prayed together And it was something else that came up that I'd been saying over myself from school, was the fact that I felt that I was average. So at
Mm.
school, I'd kind of got C's for my GCSE back in the day. And it just felt average. And I
Yeah.
was saying that over myself, that I was just average. And again, I didn't realize what impact that was having in opportunities that I missed, me holding
Yeah.
myself back in different ways. And it was only after we prayed, and I think it just naming it is so
Yeah. So
significant, isn't
good.
it? Because once you recognise it, as if it starts to slip back in, you can then go, hang on a minute, no, that's
Yeah.
not what God says about me. I'm not average. There's nothing average about me. There's nothing average about anybody. And it's just naming it and then
Yeah.
okay,
So good,
I
man.
can move forward.
Yeah, so good. And I think I love the fact that how God has brought, as He's been bringing you healing, you're passionate about seeing others. You've been on a journey. So I met you when you were having babies. You just had your second. You're a mom. But then you've had a journey of careers. Talk about your careers, and then we'll talk about where you are now, which is really exciting. What God is doing in you and through you. So you had a couple of kids,
Yeah.
married to a lovely man.
Yes, yeah. And so my background work-wise was education. So I trained in primary education. I'd worked in primary schools for a number of years. And although I loved the job, and there was certain parts of the job that I loved more than others, um, it was something that I went in and out of, even from the very beginning, actually, that other opportunities came. And I used to think, oh no, I'll try that and I'll try that. So it probably part of my personality a little bit, but so yeah, so started in education. When I met you, I think I was working part time in a school, so obviously had young children. But I began to feel a little bit disillusioned with the education system. I think being a teacher, having a class of 30, you can't be there all the time, for each and every
Mm,
child. And you sometimes get to the end of the year and you feel like maybe that child like slipped through the net a little bit. Maybe I didn't do enough for that child. And especially in terms of kind of their emotional well-being, that was something that, because I saw that if a child didn't feel, didn't have good self-esteem, didn't feel
yeah.
confident, that can affect their academic success. It can affect their life and reaching their potential. So I saw that very, very early
Yeah.
on. And then I was working for Youth for Christ, actually, and I went to a youth work conference, and Stop the Traffic were there, and they were talking about human trafficking. And they asked people, if you want to do something about this, then stand up. Just make a declaration that you're going to do something about this. And this was the first time I'd heard about it. I was like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this is happening. People are being bought and sold. And so
Mm,
I stood. And at that point, I had no idea what that looked like. I didn't even know,
yeah.
what am I going to do? But I know that I want to do something.
Wow.
And so after that, I just started. I mean, I've got a love for learning, so I like to read things. So I started to read a bit about human trafficking, looking at organisations in the UK that work in the field. And then it was about 2014, I decided to do my master's. I think because I worked in education and that's something I'm passionate about. That's probably the first thing I think about is how can I educate myself? How can I
Yeah, it's
learn
good.
more about things? So I did my master's in anthropology, human rights, and justice. And for my field work, I went into Essex Police and worked with the human trafficking department and just did my field work
Wow.
there. But after I'd completed my master's, I still was kind of teaching, still trying to work out how do I sort of move out of one career into another. I really wanted to work in either sort of human trafficking, exploitation, helping young people, children, maybe who were at risk of exploitation. And then we
Wow.
actually moved to London. Obviously, we left you, which was a bit sad, but we moved to London. We felt God was calling us to be missionaries in London. And so we moved. And it was around that time that I had a phone call. It was a very, very bizarre phone call, just out the blue from Tear Fund, asking me if I can pay more each month. And I said, oh, in between jobs, I'm trying to find a job. And she started to ask me questions about what I wanted to do. And she said to me, it sounds like you should, well, it sounds like you are a pioneer. It sounds like someone that would, you start things
Mm,
from scratch. And I was like, oh, I came off the phone and, something just,
yeah.
goes in your mind and you're thinking, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I do actually enjoy starting things from scratch and building things up. So
Yeah.
it was that conversation that it kind of it sort of built, and I started to think about, okay, what would that look like if I did start something? So yeah, that's
That's
kind of my
amazing.
business. Yeah,
It's amazing. And I think if God didn't do the healing he did at the beginning,
yeah,
you wouldn't have probably stepped into what he's
yeah,
calling you to do now, isn't it?
yeah.
So it's almost like that has to happen in order for you, because I think things in our past, they will hold us back
Mm.
from our future, and that's what probably the enemy wants to do. He wanted to keep you suppressed, you know what I mean? But actually, because God had a call for your life. So tell us, so what happened then? Because I know you have pioneered a charity,
Mm.
it's called Freedom2. Tell us about Freedom2.
Yeah. So Freedom2, when I started Freedom2, I wanted to use the skills that I built through education. So children and young people kind of felt like the right focus initially.
Yeah,
And then because it was just me starting out on my own, I thought, actually, what can I do just me? And so I narrowed it right down to girls. And I said, right, okay, this is something that I'm passionate about, especially in terms of exploitation, is working with girls. So actually, Freedom2, we work with girls between 12 and 17 years old. I have done other work. So I've written programs for Freedom2. So we run creative wellbeing programs,
brilliant.
self-development programs based around healthy relationships. What does that look like? Confidence, empowering yourself, empowering others around you. And so I've adapted some of those programs to actually run women's programs as well, because I feel like
Brilliant.
it's a natural progression. But in terms of Freedom2, we started in 2017. So I founded the charity, and then obviously we've just grown from that point. We started with one program. We've now got quite a few programs, but the main program that we run is called Freedom2 Create, which is the one that we go into schools and run. And like I said, we use creative methods. So like jewelry making, weaving, lots
Brilliant.
of fun, kind of interactive, but we feed through those really important topics. So, we talk about how they feel about themselves. We talk about online safety, social media, because these are
Yeah,
all really
brilliant.
relevant topics for young people. And really, we just talk to them about what they're struggling with or what they want to talk about, because we want to be very much youth led. We don't want, me as an adult to go, this is what I
Yeah,
think we should do.
so good. Yeah,
Yeah. So
so good.
and we've got on the we've got a trustee board, and on the trustee board we have a young person on that board as well, because again,
Brilliant.
it's really important that, because we can sit around the table as adults and make decisions, but actually if we don't have the youth voice in the middle of that, then we could make the wrong decision, really, I think, for young people.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
so that's the heart of the work. We do a lot of exhibitions. So the work that the girls produce, we then try, when we have funding, to exhibit the work. And we do that partly because obviously we want to show their work. We want the girls
Yeah,
to feel, that's my work. It's actually being shown. People are coming to see my work. We
it's
invite the local
amazing.
mayor, people from the community.
Wow.
So it's a really great event for the girls to think, actually that's my work, but also to have that wider conversation with the community. The most recent project that we've done recently is called Freedom to Travel Safely. And that was, I basically wrote that because I'd seen a lot on the news about harassment for girls
Wow.
in transport. And I thought, actually, I want to hear what the girls have to say about this. I want to know what the girls' experiences are. And so we did a pilot. And from that, we also then did an exhibition, and we worked in partnership with a
Wow.
photographer. And it was amazing. And actually, we had so many significant people that came to the exhibition and panel talk, including people from the Met Police. And they said, this is
Wow.
fantastic, that you're using these creative ways of talking about things that are really important to young people.
And it's a challenge because you're trying to step out faithfully, seeing the need, because you're seeing there's a need that's happening on the tubes, and but there's obviously constraints. Just talk about some of the constraints. I know, like funding and things like that. Just some of the challenges you find as a charity, you're trying to make a way, isn't it, and trying to help young women. But there's things that can hinder in that, isn't there?
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. So, like I said, this particular project was a pilot project. That was because we got a small pot of funding from a local
Yeah,
foundation who said, yeah, we would really want to support you in this, which is fantastic. But what we really love to do is to be able to extend that project now. So to be able to go to
yeah,
different schools, talk to more girls, even maybe do a campaign where we can, get
brilliant.
this out even further. but that goes back to the funding. And obviously,
Yeah,
there's so many fantastic organizations, charities, not-for-profits that are all looking for those pots of money, and are doing fantastic
yeah,
work. So it is hard you feel like you're in a very competitive environment trying to find that money to fund some of the work. But also, like, through COVID, we lost quite a lot of volunteers because people had to change working patterns, and obviously we weren't going into schools during COVID, and then we came out. So we always need more people,
yeah,
which, for volunteers is fantastic because obviously they're doing it voluntarily. But if it would be fantastic also for us to become more sustainable is to actually have more members of staff. So at the moment,
right, right.
it's me.
Yeah,
And I can only do so much work. It'd be fantastic if I had more of me's, not necessarily the same as
yeah,
me, but manpower, women power, that they can go into the schools and run the programs and do other work as well. So I would say that the main challenges is obviously money, which is the same for most
yeah,
charities, and having people, to do the work as well.
yeah. Uh, I just think that investing in you and what you're doing would be a good invest. So those people are listening who, if you're thinking I've got some money to invest, I know Mel and I know she's sincere and she will use the money wisely, but we need to make a change because trafficking and what's going on in the world is huge, isn't it? And I think a lot of us can be naive about what's going on. There's a lot of stuff going on. And I love the fact that, Mel, you want to raise awareness, prevent the girls from getting to that place. So often we think about trafficking being kids from different nations coming in, but are you saying there's trafficking within the UK? Is
Mm.
that going on with young people in the UK as well?
Yeah. Yeah. Just firstly to say, though, like you said, it is the fact that we are an early intervention charity. So we are working with girls. Our vision is that all girls will be free from exploitation. And all the programs that we run are around those important topics. So, for example, like I said, healthy relationships. If you understand what a healthy relationship is, if someone is lying to you, then that is not a healthy relationship. So what we're hoping is, those red flags will be seen by girls before they enter into maybe a really destructive and awful relationship potentially. So that's the work that we do, is very much prevention, which actually it's not unique, but what you find a lot of time is a lot of charities work with survivors or work with
Yeah,
people, on the front lines, whereas we're kind of going further upstream and saying, okay, what can we do? And what I want to make clear is that this is not putting things on girls. We're not saying that they're victims. We're not saying that they're
mm,
always vulnerable. It's not about that. It's about saying, actually, let's empower girls to be confident, to have healthy self-esteem, to understand and
brilliant.
see things like, well, when we do online safety, to understand that there are risks, that there are harms out there, and knowing what they are.
Yeah,
So, but in terms of the trafficking, yeah, absolutely. I think people do tend to think that it's just, people in the UK think it's people coming from other countries that are trafficked into the
yeah,
UK. It's happening in our country. But also, I don't know if you've heard of like county lines, like
right, yeah,
child criminal exploitation. That is a form of trafficking. But again,
right,
people don't fully understand that in terms of human trafficking. So, we're not signposting for trafficking or anything like that charity, but there are some fantastic charities out there in the UK. We've got A21 who work in the field of human trafficking, we've got Justice and Care. So anyone who's listening who has a real interest in human trafficking and wanting to do something about it, there are charities in the UK that work specifically in this.
right. And you're doing some stuff with, is it possible, are you doing some stuff with the police around the safe travels? Can you just share a bit more about that?
Yeah, so we, like I said, at the exhibition and panel talk, we had someone from the Met who came, who was on the panel, and he was really interested in helping us to work more with the Met. So we've had a number of meetings about, and especially with Redbridge, because Redbridge is a borough in London that we tend to work in most. And so we've met with the Redbridge Met. And it is about forming relationships. It's about, sort of them knowing what we're doing, us knowing what they're doing, and seeing if there's an overlapping, if we can work together on a particular project. We would love to do more around the campaigning, because obviously when we did the exhibition last time, it was about photos. So we had the girls' work kind of digitally imposed onto
Wow.
billboards. And it was just their voices of what they want to do and what changes they want for safe travel. So there's definitely
Amazing.
there's lots of conversations. We're having lots of conversations at the moment in terms of what we can do with the Met Police, but also just knowing that they know what we do now. So if anything comes in
Yeah.
the future, they can go, okay, Freedom2, this is a good connection that we can actually do more work with them.
So that's amazing, Mel. And if people want to get involved with what you're doing or support you, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so we've got our website, which is www.freedom2.org.uk. We're on most social media platforms. So we're on Instagram, which is at Freedom2UK. We're on X. We're on TikTok. Can you believe it? Um,
Wow, come
so
on.
yeah, all the same, sort of at Freedom2 UK. So yeah, come and have a look at our work. If you want to get involved, you want to volunteer, then obviously you probably need to be London based if you want to do that. But we always need help, things like social media, which can be done virtually, fundraising. So we're actually going to
Yeah.
be doing in a few weeks' time, we're doing a half marathon walk, which I can't believe I've said.
Whoa.
So yeah, so that we're raising money for the Freedom to Travel Safely project. So again, if you want to come and join us and do the walk, then please do, or you can sponsor us as well. There's lots of different ways.
How can we support you in terms of prayer as well?
Hmm. I think, wisdom and discernment for the charity,
Yeah.
that I'm leading it in the right way, that we're meeting the right people, building the right relationships and partnerships. Because we're a very, very small charity, we are now starting to do a lot of partnership, like I said, with the Met, with other small organisations where we can align with our work. So just praying for those right relationships, connections,
Yeah.
that we can work in partnership with other people, that we can be stronger together, really. Um,
Brilliant.
so just, that every day, because sometimes, it does, when you're constantly trying to find money for a charity, it can be a bit draining at times. So
Yeah.
just for wisdom on that as well.
And could young girls who come across you, could they reach out to you? And so, say if there's someone who's young who's listening to this, who actually is struggling with their self-esteem and things like that, is there within your platform, can they contact you and get support, or is that something they could do as well?
We don't do direct referrals. Schools are normally the way that we do our work. So
Okay.
schools will refer girls to us. But there's no harm in people contacting us and saying, is there any capacity for you to do a
Right.
program in our church? We could come and do a youth group. We could do a workshop with the youth group. We could, so there are ways that we could
Yeah,
work with that.
brilliant.
So yeah, don't not get in touch. But obviously, we wouldn't really do one-to-one referrals like some organisations.
Okay. But if a church wanted to, because there's also I'm remembering there's a course you're doing also that be good for women within the church as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
So in terms of, so you're happy to do stuff within schools, but also the stuff that you want to do within the church as well.
Yeah, so I've written another program called Becoming, but this is not part of Freedom2. It's kind of
Yeah.
my own program.
The
But
entrepreneur, Mel.
yeah, but it is off the back of obviously all the work that I've done with Freedom2. So it's a self-empowerment program for women. So it's 4 workshops, but again, if the church wanted me to do it in a day, we could adapt it slightly, or if you want it done over a number of weeks, we can do it like that. So again, very much using creative methods. And I think I'm so passionate about this because, if people knew me years ago, I'm not an artist, I'm not anything like that, but I've seen the power of creativity.
Really?
And the way that it helps with conversations, and it's quite healing as well when you're actually being creative. So we will be using those kind of methods, but talking about, how can you feel good about yourself? How do you define yourself? How do you value yourself? And I just feel really passionate about this, that actually,
That's
even
so
as an
good.
adult woman, you can sometimes not feel great about yourself.
Yeah.
And, it just gives you time and space to be able to think about you, which is important.
That is so important. I come across women all the time, and their lack of self-esteem and
Yeah.
self-worth hinder them from moving into their ministry and the things that
Yeah.
God has for them. And I'm so impressed how you have not allowed that. You've got your healing. You've, one of the things you said, you have got confidence, and I think we all need that. We're all meant to have that. And it's finding ways of getting that, working through what it is that is causing that, and allowing the Lord to really heal that part of women. I'm aware of your time. Could you pray um for women and young girls, just because they'll probably be listening to this, just that they would, yeah, they would find that sense of worth again, because you're not just want to do practical things. It is for you, it's spiritual as well, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's both. God is part of what you're doing. And probably the main reason why you're doing what you're doing. It's
yeah,
not just
exactly.
do you know what I mean? It's a calling for you.
Yes.
Um, yeah. So would you be able to just end this call with
Mm.
just praying for women that they would I access some of what you're doing because it's brilliant, but also that they would find that wholeness that you've discovered in
Mm.
God yourself. Is that
Yeah,
okay?
yeah, yeah.
Thank you, Mel. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord, that you're with us. Thank you for this conversation. Thank you for women. Thank you for girls. And Lord, I just really pray where women have been, where it's been stolen, where there's been feeling of not being good enough, where there's been feeling of I can't do this because someone else is better than me or there's someone better for the job. I pray, Lord, for those lies that have
Mm,
stolen opportunities, that have stolen um, times when women could have moved forward. I really pray now, Lord, for anyone that's listening, Lord, that they would know that they are how you see them, that you see
mm,
them as beautiful, you see them as amazing people, and that you're wanting the best for them. You're wanting them to reach their potential. You're wanting them to be able to step out in faith, to be able to step out into opportunities. And where things have held them back, Lord, I
mm.
really pray, Lord, that they would be able to put an end to that and say, actually, no, that these are lies. These are lies that
Yeah,
I'm saying over myself, and that they will not accept those lies anymore, that they will move into the truth, your truth, that they would know that they are your daughters, and how much you love them and how much you want them to be whole, how much you want them to walk freely. And but we didn't talk about why I call it Freedom2, but it's that feeling of being free to go
yeah,
on, being free to be able to reach your potential, being free to be able to help other people around you. And it's
yeah.
that freedom. And
Thank
I
you.
pray that now over every single woman and girl that may be listening to this.
Amen.
Pray for freedom, freedom over their
Amen.
minds, freedom over their body, freedom over
Mm,
actions and the way that they see themselves, Lord, that they would
yeah.
step out today with a new vision, with a new sense of being your daughter and what that carries, that it carries so many things, Lord, that they are your daughter, that I can almost see the picture of you sort of having the jewels and being a daughter of the King,
Mm,
that you're walking out
amen.
in that freedom. And all those things that held you back, I pray now that they are gone. And
Amen.
I just pray that for all the women, Lord, that are listening now. Yeah, we thank you, Lord. Just you love
Amen.
us, Lord, and you are amazing. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Mel, so much. If you're a church leader, I want to say this is a really important topic for the women in your church. Do contact Mel. Information will be at the bottom of the screen. If you are a headmaster and you work in a school, once again, contact Mel. She'd love to. She's very aware of what the restrictions are within schools, so she's not going to break any rules. But it's really important that we raise awareness for these women, girls, and women. So thank you, Mel, so much for your time. It's just lovely just seeing how much you've grown and what you're doing, the impact you are making for the kingdom and bringing God's kingdom on this earth, and just seeing these young ladies empowered and free. And thank you for your prayers as well. It's so powerful. Bless you. Thank you for
Thank
coming
you.
on.
Thank you for the opportunity as always.
So good too. So please share, please like, please subscribe. Let this word be spread. So any one of your leaders that you know, just tell your leaders come and jump on and listen, and let's get the word out there. Thank you guys for listening. Take care. We'll see you again.